It's really nice to be here. I was thrilled to be asked to talk about one of my favorite subjects. And I'll tell you a little more about why that's true as we roll along. I am in my 29th year in the school district as the Family Outreach Specialist. I had a different title in the beginning, but I've been doing basically the same thing, connecting families to resources in the community and in the school, and also leading parent discussions. I love bringing parents together to learn about new things and to share what they know with each other. Unfortunately, with such a short program tonight, we won't really have an opportunity for a whole lot of sharing, but I'm hoping, as Nikki said, that you'll be able to take away some good bits of information, perhaps refresh some that you already know, and maybe even be interested in exploring some resources to get more information. The handouts that you're receiving as you came in this evening do have on the front page my contact information, and I invite you to contact me by phone or email if you have questions after this evening, and I will try to answer them or refer you to someone who can do that. When you think about services for children with particular emotional needs, a lot of you probably sat there thinking, you know, even if your child doesn't have any kind of emotional need that someone else would identify, we all have moments in our families with our children. And it's really great to be able to feel that you're able to help children when they have strong feelings, to manage them and know what to do with them. We can learn all we can to do that. Does it mean we can do that every single time? Not really, because they have such complex needs, and so do we as adults. So there's a lot of a fit for that. When people use the term mental health too, some people immediately think of mental illness, and I actually looked it up, and the definitions that I see most often are something like this: the psychological state of someone who is functioning at a satisfactory level of emotional and behavioral adjustment. And I don't know about you, but there are days that I really wonder about my own adjustment. So, you know, I think that makes us human. When I think about helping children manage feelings, the reason I'm so excited to be able to share this topic with you is because it centers around a skill that I believe is the cornerstone of effective parent-child relationships. And that is really becoming a good listener for your children. I learned about it in so many different ways as I got my training, and as I reviewed over the years and have used many different parenting program curriculums. Each one of them always includes a section on how to be a good listener. And I don't know about you, but even someone that has my background in training, whenever I would be reminded of how important it is, I know after that reminder, I would go home and make a bigger effort to be a better listener. Even though we know we should, we get caught up in every day and we don't necessarily really do that. So I personally found that whenever things got out of hand for me as a parent, and oh my, they really did. If my kids were here, they'd love to tell you about a few of those times. I would go home with a renewed vow to really concentrate on being a better listener, and that things would really even out. Normally when those periods of imbalance, we'll say, were happening, it was during times that I was very busy and my stress level was higher, and I didn't think about really being there and being connected. When different writers and different curriculum mention the listening skill, they call it many different things, and probably a lot of you have heard one or the other of these terms. Chaim Ginott calls it providing emotional first aid. in his book, Between Parent and Child. John Gottman calls it emotion coaching. Louise Gurney, who was a beloved professor at Penn State that some of you may have had the opportunity to know before her retirement, and who taught many people how to be parent educators, called it showing understanding. Thomas Gordon called it reflective listening. Elizabeth Prairie calls it acknowledging feelings. And Michael Popkin, who designed the active parenting program, calls it active listening. You can call it whatever you want, or just listening, but the idea is that hopefully when we talk a little more about what it is, you will also go home tonight with renewed effort to really do that well. In a moment, I'd like to do a little demonstration for you of what effective listening looks like and what ineffective listening looks like as well. So I'm going to invite Jess to come up and join me. As the intern, she gets to do such things. And Jess is going to be my daughter for a few minutes, and she's going to talk to me a little bit about what's going on with her. So Jess, come on down. So take one is going to be mom who does not really listen very well to her daughter.
Hi. How you doing? Hi, Mom.
Hi.
So I just got back from school and I tried to check my phone because Carrie was going to text me so we could hang out, and my phone broke.
Huh. Your phone broke. Huh.
Yeah, I opened it up and I can hear the text messages coming in. Like, Mom, I heard the text messages coming in, but I opened it up and the screen went away.
Really?
Yeah, so can you go to Verizon tonight and get a new phone?
Oh, we can't go to Verizon. I'm really sorry.
Why
We're really
not?
busy. We've got lots to do.
Like what? Going
What?
through the mail?
Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So you wanted to...
I really need a new phone because I was making plans tonight and now I don't know how I'm going to get hold of everyone.
Do you think we can just get you a new phone? Do you think they just grow on trees? Do you think that just because your phone broke, we need to run right out tonight to get a phone?
If it was for you, we would go out and get a new phone tonight.
Oh, don't be fresh with me. I'll tell you what, you know what your problem is? You just think that just because you want one, that I should drop everything and go out and do that.
Because that's what Carrie's mom would do. She actually listens to her daughter.
Oh, now here we go again. Talking about Carrie's mom.
Fine. You
Sorry,
can play
not
on your
perfect.
phone and I will go to my room and...
Okay, I think that's enough. Thank you, Jess. So, what did you see that was not good listening?
You checking your phone first.
Oh,
Is yours
did you notice? And anything else? Well, we knew. No, just kidding. Anything else?
Not making eye contact with the person who's communicating.
No eye contact, checking your phone, getting defensive,
Bringing up old stuff.
bringing up old stuff, yeah.
Really interesting what happened to her.
No, I'm not interested.
Interesting.
No, yeah, I know. It kind of looked that way, didn't it? Okay. Anything else you noticed? All right. Well, we're going to give it another try and see if we can do better this time. Take two.
Mom, I came home from school today and I had plans with Carrie and I got a text message from her and I opened up my phone and the screen was broken so I couldn't read it.
Wow. That must have been really just disappointing to open it up and not see anything.
I know, it's really frustrating because I had all these plans and now I don't know what I'm going to do.
You feel lost without it, huh?
Yeah, I'm really connected with my cell phone.
I know. That wasn't part of it. I know how important it is to you to be connected. Can you think of anything you want to do?
Do you think we could go to Verizon tonight and maybe get a phone, or at least look at them?
If you really want to go tonight?
Yeah, because I don't know what to do. Maybe I could call Carrie on the house phone.
We do have a house phone, and that is an option.
Do you think it's possible to go tonight?
Unfortunately, it's a little difficult for me. I would love to be able to drop everything and just go, but I'm wondering if we could wait until tomorrow.
Okay, I can wait a day. I'll just call her on the house phone.
It sounds like a good idea. But in the meantime, I'm really sorry to hear about your phone.
Thank you, Mom.
We'll touch base on that later. Thanks. What differences did you see? I was sympathizing.
You acknowledge the problem first.
She was asking that you help her think of another option.
Didn't give in on what she was asking, but helped her think of another option. I guess
You acknowledge the problem.
acknowledge the problem. Yeah.
I think you also acknowledged her feeling.
That was
How she was feeling.
I was trying to do that. All right, mission accomplished. The technique for active listening is one that it sounds simple, but it can be very difficult to do when you really need to put all of your own thoughts and feelings aside and zero in on what your child is saying or not saying, how they look, how they're acting. Adele Faber and Elaine Maislish, who I mentioned before, they studied it first with Chaim Ginott, and they said that being an effective listener ranges from just really paying attention and making the eye contact to doing something as simple as nodding and making little listening noises, you know, those oh, you know, those kinds of things. And all agree that depending on the age of the child, listening and naming the feelings that they express teach a child a couple different things. One is when you do try to name the feelings, for very young children, you're teaching them vocabulary, words they can use to express their feelings. The other thing that you do that a lot of people really aren't aware of is that you're allowing your child, by naming the feeling, to actually move the sensation they're experiencing and where they're experiencing the feeling from the primitive amygdala part of the brain to bringing up to the prefrontal, I can't talk this evening, sorry, prefrontal cortex, where you can actually do problem solving. So there really is a change in the brain when a feeling is identified. And being able to move from just experiencing an emotion to being able to think about it, possibly talk about it, and problem solve about it helps people not just become stuck and wired down in their feelings. So the active listening steps that I mentioned a little bit ago are in your handouts on page 3. So if you have a look at those with you, they are, first of all, and some of these are things that you noticed and identified were either missing or present in what I just did. First one is maintaining eye contact with the speaker. And I put a little note in there, unless the speaker is an early adolescent or a child who's overly sensitive. I noticed with my kids that when they were little, they really wanted you to be looking at them when they were speaking. Otherwise, they really wouldn't go on until they had your eyes. Sometimes when you have early adolescents around, they really would rather you didn't look at them because they start feeling self-conscious, or they maybe accuse you of staring at them or some such thing. So sometimes we do good listening with our adolescents when they're beside us, like riding in the car is a great place and doing a task together. Sometimes they're more forthcoming then. But at any rate, in general, when you are trying to be a good listener, maintaining good eye contact, not a steady stare that kind of makes someone feel like, uh-oh, what's wrong? But, you know, normal eye contact. And you do want to signal that you're listening by, you know, making those either nods or the little noises when it's appropriate. And again, you're going to put your own feelings aside and focus on what the other person is saying. Then, if you want to get into the whole part where you are helping to show that you understand by naming the feeling the other person is expressing, you can summarize sometimes a little, you know, just talking about what they said, kind of summarizing. So what I heard you say is, your phone just died and you're stuck without one, for example. You can name the feeling that the speaker is expressing. It sounds like that really upset you when your phone died. It sounds like that really embarrassed you when that happened in front of everyone. You know, just trying to get at it. Even if you don't get it right, especially with, you're talking to a child about feelings they're experiencing because of something that happened when they weren't with you. Sometimes it's a lot of guesswork. Sometimes all you're seeing is a very emotional child, and you really have no idea what got them in that frame of mind. So it's guesswork a lot of the time. But even if you get it wrong, a couple of different things may happen. Your child may correct you, or your child may really think about it a little bit and really start thinking about what they are feeling. They may give you the actual feeling that they're experiencing. But the other thing is they will know that you're caring enough to try to get how they're feeling. And that is worth so much in having a good parent-child relationship. So we also want to try to sit out long pauses and not feel like we have to jump in and fill the empty places with a lot of talk. Sometimes just being silent and being present is being a good listener. And then if your child feels motivated to tell you more, they will. We may also, in being a good listener, ask open-ended questions to get a little more information. And some examples that are here is, well, how did you feel about that? Or is there anything else that's bothering you? So, and then maybe even moving toward problem solving, you know, or thinking about what they would like to be different, you know. What do you think about that? What do you think you could do? How would you like things to change? So each situation requires just a different blend of skills and understanding. If your child is engaged in a full-blown tantrum, there's very little that you can do except to make sure that your child is not really hurting herself or himself or other people. And wait for it to run its course. Children vary in their reaction to a person being near them, touching them, when they're really out of control, upset. And during a tantrum, a child is not capable of listening to another person, really. So there was actually a study done recently that they mentioned on NPR that tantrums actually have a real pattern to vocalizations that occur, and there's normally a period of loud, maybe yelling, screaming, and then it usually winds down into sort of a whimpering stage before it goes away. And the people who studied this observed a lot of different tantrums, and were impressed by the fact that they all seem to follow that course. If you're having a child having a tantrum in public, that can be very embarrassing for you, and you may feel helpless and like you want to stop it. But honestly, there is really very little that one can do to actually intervene in that. Our hope is that by trying to observe your child and catch them when their emotions are at a lower level of intensity, that we're able to help them be able to think about that before it reaches a higher level of distress. However, there are some kids who appear to go from 0 to 60 in a few seconds flat, and it's very difficult to catch that. There are some children, too, who are what Dr. Ross Greene, the author of The Explosive Child, would say is a child who lacks in the domains of flexibility and frustration. So they find it very, very difficult to adapt to situations and to switch gears. And if you have a child in this category, it's definitely important to be a good listener when you can. But the actual skills to help your child deal with those feelings will take place in a lot of teaching happening during the good moments. When a child is experiencing the milder emotion is indicated by either their nonverbal language or facial expression, or their posture, or what they're saying. Parents and caregivers can listen, tune in to what they're seeing and hearing. And for a lot of people, this isn't their natural way to operate. When it's obvious is when it's a little out of control, because we are busy. We all have a lot of things to do. Parenting is hard work. Caregiving is hard work. And we do have a lot of things we need to do in a day. So sometimes it's difficult to catch every nuance in your child's behavior. The skills that we're talking about, the practicing really with the eye contact and with the summarizations and the naming the feelings for the child, take a lot of practice until each person can figure out a way to do it that feels comfortable for herself or himself. Everyone will have a little different style in how they do that. And we also sometimes just say we never want to respond in unhelpful ways, but for some reason, these messages that maybe we heard as kids, or that, things that we vowed we would never say are kind of stuck in there somewhere. And have you ever caught yourself just saying things that you swore you would never say to your child and being shocked at yourself? I think they implant that tape when we have our children arrive to us. All of a sudden we're capable of saying and doing things that we never thought we would be able to do. I was going to be the best parent in the world until I actually had children. You remember how that was. We have so much more experience on the planet than our children do. We're older than them. We've had things happen, and we've solved a lot of problems. And a lot of us would really love to solve our children's problems for them, or prevent them from even having to experience them. But the truth is, when children have the opportunity to experience things themselves and to think about what they're experiencing and learn how to problem solve, they do so much better when they're able to come up with solutions themselves. They really feel like they have some ownership of what they're figuring out. So we really do need to step out of ourselves and try to understand where our children are coming from, and then give them some indication that we get how they feel. I want to mention the more explosive children again. By demonstrating to these children that you understand how hard it is for them to really pull themselves together, you know, let them know that you recognize that it's very difficult for them often. It'll really help them to feel like you understand them, and you'll really help them be able to help work on a plan that they can at least try to come back and problem solve something after they have become very upset about something. Listening is important at all ages. I find that now my own two young people are in their 20s, and they do still come back to me for that listening because they've come to expect it. And their issues just get different as they get older, but they really do like to know that they can come back and get that kind of help. I actually just saw a notice of a book that I haven't read yet myself, and so it's not on my recommended list. It's called The Available Parent: Radical Optimism for Raising Teens and Tweens by John Duffy and Thomas Phelan. Thomas Phelan, some of you may have in your past come across the 1-2-3 Magic or more 1-2-3 Magic programs or books as a way to help stop undesirable behaviors in children. And he's also done some good work on understanding self-esteem with children. They talked about, in this little excerpt, teenagers are left feeling unheard and misunderstood, and parents are left feeling bewildered by the changes in their child and adolescence and their sudden lack of effectiveness as parents. The parent has become unavailable, so the teen responds in kind, and a negative, often destructive cycle of communication begins. You know, when I chose to, pull out my own electronics as I was being a poor listener, I do see that quite often in many families, and often even in my own these days when we're all present. Everyone has the laptop, the phone, whatever, and sometimes you are in each other's presence, but you're not really present with each other. So what we're talking about is truly being available, so that when another person is speaking, you're actually receiving the message that comes through and what they're saying and how they appear. I just thought that was a great quote, considering that Jess and I were going to do this little demonstration, and obviously she's more of an adult child. Teenagers do enjoy these electronics, and they often aren't as interested in interacting with their parents as they are with peers. So taking advantage of every opportunity you have to be with them can mean that we spend a lot of that time reminding them of things that need to be done, maybe criticizing things that they haven't done, those sorts of things. And it's really easy for that, some of the more connected relationship that we have often with younger children to continue, unless we work at it a little more. How many of you have teens in this group? And how many of you have younger children? Okay, so many of you have younger children, and some of you with younger children who aren't yet in their teens will, maybe start thinking, oh my goodness, what do I have coming here? I found, personally, the teen years to be a real pleasure. Because when you know that you can expect some indifferent behavior sometimes, but you have developed a really good relationship with your young person, they do come back and they do talk to you. And after a little period in early adolescence where they think you don't know anything at all, ever, and that even they might say something such as my son did at age 13, you don't have to tell me what to do anymore. I'm grown up now. This same young man kept apologizing to me in his later teens for how he treated me when he was 13. And I said, it's okay, you were just being 13, you know? But knowing that they're going to go through ages and stages is very helpful. I want to get back to now this whole listening process. When a child has felt like they've been heard and they've freed themselves to think of a way to manage these emotions that they're having, there are many different techniques for managing the emotions. And these may be, and they're on page 4 for you in the chart, that is under the tools for dealing with life, and on the left, the feelings. There are many different ways to, that different people find are helpful for managing strong feelings. And one of them is verbal, to actually speak the feeling, to talk about it. Verbal and auditory are connected. You know, sometimes when a child speaks about how he or she feels, and then they hear their voice, or maybe they hear their parent or caregiver identifying feeling, you know, again, it really helps to move them toward understanding and toward being able to talk about it and change what they're doing, or think about maybe using one of these techniques a little more. Some people find that if they just start to sing or hum or do something like that also, that it helps to calm you down. Some of you may do that if you start to find yourself getting a little frustrated, say in traffic. Some of you may, you know, just start singing to try to calm yourself down. That's one of the things I do, or I just talk out loud. I'll say, it's fine, I'll be fine, I'll get there, everything's fine. I do that a lot. So if you ever see me riding along talking to myself, I don't have a hands-free phone. I'm just talking to myself. The physical or kinesthetic techniques for dealing with strong feelings can range from, you know, just getting up and running around a little bit. Some people find, you know, especially parents who are feeling a little upset about something, may find themselves, you know, maybe cleaning the house, or you know, really needing to go for a run, or you know, just kind of do something physical, even if it involves, you know, just sort of repetitive motions. You know, if that's your kind of thing and it calms you, that is a wonderful thing. The other kinesthetic ways involve, you know, touching, being touched. Some people don't want to be touched when they're upset. And some people really feel great when someone comes up and either gives them a hug or just kind of rubs their arm. And children are the same. You know, how does your child respond to those kinds of things? Then there are self-soothing or nurturing kinds of things that people can do. And those can range from, you know, doing something like taking a bath, you know, asking for that hug, you know, doing the rub or whatever. Some kids, some of your kids may have blankets or other kinds of lovey objects that they like to just touch and hold, or maybe rub on their faces, and those are helpful that way too. Some people like to be creative, to go off and write or draw a picture, you know, and that can be a great way to do something about emotions that you're feeling. I had a daughter who became a writer, and she actually is now working in that field. And as a young person, she always had paper and or journals She has many full journals, but when she was upset, she would head off to her room and just write and write and write. And she found that to be her great release. Some people use humor, either making a joke themselves, trying to tune in to a favorite comedian on, either on an audio or on a video, and just get lost in that, or read a funny book. Go find a person that you know is always in a good mood and has a sense of humor and might tell you a joke. There are many different ways that these can be done. Young children don't know all these ways yet, and we can help them explore what works for them. And one of the ways we do that as parents and caregivers is to model ourselves when we are experiencing something. Talk about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Talk about how you were feeling before you tried something and how you feel now. With young children, you can engage them in games to try some of these different things. I've mentioned Elizabeth Crary earlier, and the pages that you're looking at there with the tools are developed by her. She, in the company she works for, Parenting Press, they actually have a deck of cards called self-calming cards that have suggested things that you can do in all of those categories. And with children, when they're not upset, you can talk about what those are and talk to them about, what do you like? What feels good for you? This is what I've tried. I wonder if you'd like to try that. You talk about it so that in a moment, when you're able to problem solve with them after doing some listening, you might suggest, what would you like to try? Because you've already talked about that. You could maybe suggest that they pick something. Some children, you may want to help them figure out what they think might work for them or what they've tried and does work. Write those things down. And when they're in a moment, you can have them go pick one and look at what they've written down and see if that will work for them then. If we teach them the variety, then hopefully they will find something that works for them, or a range of things that work. And these, again, are best initiated during times of milder emotion. When they're having extreme emotions, you need to sometimes come back and talk about these things later. Problem solving to deal with the situation is the second part of the process. And Elizabeth Crary reminds us that there are two parts to every situation, and it's the feelings are one part and the situation is the other. And kids need to learn how to manage both. So dealing with the feeling first is very important, and then later they can deal with the situation. And the steps that she has on page 4 under the situation reflect the problem-solving steps. The first one is to reflect on the experience and think about what was it, what caused it, and then brainstorm some possible solutions or alternatives to the situation. She's added a step that I don't always see, and that is to look for positives in the situation. And I thought that was a nice touch, because often people are only concentrating on the negatives of a situation that is a problem for them. Then the fourth step, we went back to the brainstorming alternatives for a moment. When you are helping your child brainstorm alternatives, it's really important to really try to think as creatively as possible. And if they suggest something that you think is just not going to work, or you don't think is a great idea, you can actually acknowledge it. Well, that's one thing you could do. Can you think of anything else? Really, maybe even writing all the ideas down so that you can come back and look at each one. it really helps to engage children in this process because it's a skill they'll need for life to be able to be creative about solving problems. Then after that, you look at each one and you gather data about each one of those things. And then sometimes you end up choosing, making a new plan, and evaluating what you have. Throughout life, problem solving just keeps coming up. We need to keep using it over and over. And when we solve one problem, we often have another one right on its heels. It does take a lot of practice, and kids often need a lot of coaching to be able to do this effectively. So in the handouts, you're also going to find, in the first pages, reminders about why listening and emotion coaching are important tools. And the last 2 pages, as I mentioned, were developed by Elizabeth Prairie. She made these available to us when she was here at our 2005 Focus on Strong Families conference as a keynote speaker. And her topic was the book that I mentioned on the front page, Dealing with Disappointment, Helping Kids Cope When Things Don't Go Their Way. And I wanted to mention that particular resource again. Several of you have young children in the room. And her book really breaks down step by step some ways you can help your child to develop these skills and to learn to manage their emotions by trying out all those different techniques. And through the book, there are lots of opportunities for you to stop and think about what works best for you and do some exercises to try them all out. There is no one answer to everything, but I believe that being an effective listener with your children is probably one of the things that you can universally do that will help in so many different situations. When you have a child who has very, very intense reactions, it's going to be a bigger challenge to keep the cool and calm yourself that you need and to be able to put your own feelings aside in those situations. Since you are a human being and often when another person is experiencing emotions, it becomes very difficult to not take some of that on yourself. It's really important for each of us to really get to know ourselves and our own temperaments and what makes us respond to the world the way we do. And if you yourself are a pretty intense person and your child is an intense person, there can be lots of fireworks in your day-to-day interactions. Being aware that this is the way it is can really help a lot of people to, in a way, step back from themselves a little bit and think a little harder about what you need in the situation. And probably the most important thing of all in thinking about helping children deal with strong feelings is that it really means that parents and caregivers need to take really good care of themselves and make sure that when the opportunity for helping your child by emotion coaching them, listening, helping to problem solve with them, that you are really emotionally ready and able to be present and do that. Children will pick up right away on parents who aren't listening, aren't really present. I know that, I mentioned before, having the background and the training doesn't necessarily mean that some of us who know better, we're good at doing this all the time. Nobody does it all the time. But if you can try to incorporate that kind of responding to your child more often into your interactions, you will you really enhance your relationship and be able to do it more and more often. Because when you start practicing it more and more, it starts to become second nature. But you also need to be self-aware to when you really, this isn't a good time for you to listen. And be honest with your children. And, you know, just let them know, I can see that you really have this issue that you want to talk about right now. Right now, I really need to do this. But make sure you make a time to come back and talk about it. And if it's something that is truly that important that you can maybe put whatever you're doing aside, by all means do. But you know when there are things that you really can't do that with and times that you can. I really needed to mention that part because I think some people think that when you're a parent, you're just supposed to always be right there and be ready to be tuned into your child. And there are times that maybe your own emotions are very high and your ability to emotion coach or listen to your child will really be hampered. And so if you find that is true more often than you would like, then it's really important to know that maybe it's time to reach out for a little help yourself. From talking to other people, another parent who has a child about the same age, coming to a program where you can talk to other parents or talk to someone such as me or someone such as the presenters who are going to be joining us in the next months to come. There are lots of great resources out there, people who can just help sometimes by being a good listener for you and helping you figure out an approach to the things that you're dealing with. So I guess I just think that listening is probably the most important thing we can do as parents. And I really want to thank you all for coming here this evening and for listening to me for so long and not really having that many opportunities to say much yourselves. I would like to offer to answer a few questions in the remaining couple minutes we have.
When you have a child that's making a transition to their tween, and you start noticing that change, and they don't, what used to work no longer works, I mean, how do you try to head that off the past? Is there a method that you use, kind of a combination, for your children that, is there a good way to know when you're supposed to start making changes, like giving more responsibility, listening differently? It's hard sometimes because they still want to be a little kid, but they've got these big grown-up emotions that start to come into play. It's hard to know what appropriate, how adult is that answer. So the question is, I guess, when you're listening to the child and you hear this, what if the answer they need you don't necessarily feel is appropriate at the time to give them? I mean, how can you problem solve when it's something that's a little too mature for them to handle?
Wow. And it sounds like why you're asking that, how to help problem solve with a tween whose needs are going to be changing. How do you know when you should be responding differently and what they're capable of understanding at that stage? And it is really hard. In early adolescence, these young people, their mental capacities fluctuate. And in one area, they may be, very savvy and aware, and in others, just, they aren't there, and it fluctuates from day to day. You really just do your best. And your child will let you know if they think you're treating them like a baby, or, and you'll hear that a lot. But really just operate on your instincts, try that adjustment. But, a lot of the listening techniques, just being there, being present, trying to figure out a good time for your young person to talk to you, just being tuned in on when they seem to be comfortable with that. Often I found that with teenagers, they like to know you're around. They like to know that you're home, but they don't necessarily want to be in your presence every moment. But then they're upset if you're not going to be there. So you just feel like you're not going to win no matter what you do. Sometimes they just want to hang out beside you and they don't even really want to say much. But it speaks volumes that you're willing to just be there. So, all I can say is just keep trying different things, and it really does change. I think if you err on the side of listening too much or responding too much, they still like to know that you care. And they still like to know that there are rules and all those things. They may not act like it, but later on when they reflect back on that stage, they'll remember that you cared. And that's big. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
What happens when you're listening, but they don't listen what you need to say to them, to help them?
Oh, that happens a lot. What if you're listening and they don't then want to listen to what you have to say?
Because at some point you want to teach them how to solve the problem themselves, because you can be there all the time.
Right.
And then, because we want to tell what I want to do, because my community, because in the future he or she is able to do it by themselves. So what happens when they don't want to listen to it? Because they really have a mind, like for the phone, for instance, and they really want to know to go to Verizon to get a phone because they really plan it. So
That doesn't mean yes. She very well may have, said that was just not acceptable to her to wait.
yeah.
And so sometimes we do end up saying things that they don't want to hear. I mean, it doesn't mean that whenever we problem solve, it's all going to be tidy and have a happy ending. There are going to be those things that you're going to be showing that you understand that it's hard to wait, but, saying, but the fact is we do have to wait, and help them to think about what they can do in the meantime, Yes, I hope I didn't imply that this always comes out with a happy ending. Really, just give it your best shot and you'll be good to go. But thank you again for coming out tonight. I see we're at 8 o'clock and we should probably end, but I'm not in a rush, so if anybody wants to come ask me any questions, feel free, or as I mentioned, feel free to get in touch with me. And thank you for being here. Your kids are all lucky that you are interested in coming out.